Ghostbusters Afterlife is written and directed by Jason Reitman and stars McKenna Grace, Finn Wolfhard, Carrie Coon, and Paul Rudd. When a single mom and her two kids arrive in a small town, they begin to discover their connection to the original Ghostbusters and the secret legacy their grandfather left behind. Now, if you noticed during this review series, I skipped over a certain movie. We'll talk about that another time. I just want to focus on the main continuity. And so that's why we're skipping over to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which is basically the third entry that has been long awaited. Like with Jurassic Park 4, this was another sequel to a classic franchise that fans have been waiting for and been making theories, having ideas of what could happen, and unfortunate events. Writers cannot come up with ideas, or actors are not able to star in it or want to star in it, like Bill Murray. And then we had the death of a franchise veteran, which in this case is Harold Ramis, who passed away before this film's release. And basically we all thought this movie wouldn't happen because of the production hell it's been through. And now it had came out just a few years ago, and I think to this day, after rewatching it, I think it is still a fantastic entry in this franchise. While not perfect, definitely flawed in some areas, is a loving tribute to the original films that started it all. I really enjoy the kids here who portray the main characters. Phoebe and Trevor Spangler are really fun characters to be around, especially Phoebe, who is this science nerd who's having a hard time trying to fit into this new town. But she's able to form friends with a podcast boy and her teacher, played by Paul Rudd. And within that, she's able to find her own comfort zone of people who basically understand her and who want to be friends with her. And they basically are the exposition dumps here for the most part, though they have a few characteristics. Paul Rudd, as this teacher who wants to take care of the kids and is studying what is going on in the entire town, is a really fun character to be around, as he basically is sharing his passions with someone else who's just as interested. We see throughout the film how some of the other characters, while do like him, are not as interested in science as he is. He sees it as a big passion and something that he wants to do, and so for him to be able to share that passion with someone who understands it, I found to be very engaging. It creates a lot of fun moments between these two, interacting with each other, talking about science in a way that is exposition, but it also builds character with one another. The podcast boy is also really fun, though he is more of the exposition dump, while his banter with Phoebe is really fun and they do have good chemistry with one another. At many times, admittedly, he does come off as an exposition dump, telling stories about the town or what's going on, and he's basically there to make us understand the plot, and sometimes that just makes him feel like a lifeless character, like he's just trying to inform the plot. His personality makes up for it, and his chemistry with the characters are really cool. How he reacts to the environment around him, and when the action starts kicking in, he becomes more of a fun character. And this is what the movie is mostly focused on. It's the characters. Carrie Coon, who plays the mother of these children, is really good, and she plays someone who is going through a lot of emotions, coming back to something that she basically despised due to certain events in her life, mostly revolving around the absence of a father figure. And you know what? I'm just going to pretend that you guys already seen the film. So if you haven't seen the movie, stay away, because I'm gonna have to talk spoilers here from now on. Her father is Egon Spangler, and in the beginning of the film, it is revealed that he left to an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, right far far away from the town that he is living in, trying to capture something. And we then figure out that he's trying to keep this entire town safe from a ghost apocalypse, and he sacrificed literally his whole life just to do so, which leads to even the Ghostbusters not liking him anymore and thinking of him as more of an absent friend who didn't care much about them and took away their entire life that they worked on. And that creates a lot of emotional tension between characters and creates a lot of conflict whenever they have a conversation about Egon and what that basically means for each other in the family and how much of an impact he had or had not had in each of these characters' lives. Which comes full circle by the end when everyone realizes what is really going on, what he was really doing out here, and just how much of a selfless person he really was to do all of this. And it gives this character of Egon Spengler a loving tribute when everything comes full circle by the final act. When everything is all said and done, when the kids finally get to ghost busting and is learning everything about being a Ghostbuster, learning about the history of what happened in New York City, to finding all the relics in Egon Spengler's house and testing it all out. Like Trevor is testing out the car that the Ghostbusters drive in, and that's a lot of fun. Phoebe and Trevor and the podcast boy go out on a ghost mission when they find their first ghost, and that was a fun sequence. All that leading up to Gozer coming back from the dead to try and wreak havoc once again. Another problem that I have with this film is that they don't do much with the character Gozer. He or she is just the same character as they were in the first. Like, they share the same purpose and basically share the same plot. And in many ways, it makes the movie feel a little bit too similar at times from the original. But unlike Ghostbusters 2, the rest of the film decides to tell a story about a family going through troubled times, learning more about their history and past. So in that regard, it is structurally a little bit different in that way. And the themes and emotions presented here is very different from the first. It goes for a different tone entirely and a different feel. Even though it has music and callbacks and a lot of fan service to the original, it still feels like its own unique story with new characters it's developing, which helps make that final battle when Gozer and the Ghostbusters and Phoebe and Trevor and the kids are all trying to go up against each other. And when that climax hits, and when Egon Spengler holds on to Phoebe's hand as they help each other bust this ghost, it was just so rewarding to see. And that was such a loving tribute when everyone was able to get their own moment with Egon, saying their goodbyes, closing out each other's characters and stories. This really did feel like a Ghostbusters sequel that respected everything that the original had going for. And it left me actually pretty emotional by the end. It was so well handled. So yeah, I think for the most part the story and the characters were able to save this film from many of its flaws that it has. Not all the characters work. Some are a little bit too exposition heavy or forgettable. Sometimes it can be a bit too similar from the original film. But the characters, the story, the music, the pacing, the action, cinematography, and especially the visual effects were all so good and got me so immersed into the film that I was able to look over many of its faults, which by the way aren't really that many. It didn't really take me out of the film at all. They're just little things I just noticed here and there. I felt like the movie could have done a little bit better at. But Jason Reitman's directing was stellar. You could tell that this was made with a lot of passion, especially considering that he and his father, Ivan Reitman, made this movie together. You could tell that they really wanted to give the Ghostbusters fans something special. And for this to be Ivan Reitman's last, if not one of his last projects he's given us, felt like a blessing. And as a Ghostbusters fan myself, even though I wouldn't consider myself to be the biggest Ghostbusters expert, I'm a big fan of the original, and I really do love that. This felt like everything I wanted a Ghostbusters movie to do. And if they just end the franchise here, I think this would have been a pretty good trilogy of films. I may not have liked the second film, but I think it still did a few things right in that story, and how this film closed out everything, closed out all the characters' arcs, especially for the original Ghostbusters, despite their limited screen time here. I think it worked brilliantly. I'm gonna give Ghostbusters Afterlife an A-. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys next time.